Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast is about the journey to a more sustainable future in order for us to be able to do our bit to achieve net zero. I'll be discussing a variety of topics with experts in their field in order to educate and increase our knowledge of clean energy, electric vehicles and the electric vehicle infrastructure. So whether you're an individual wanting to make a difference at home, a small business or a corporate, this podcast is just for you. Today, I have got with me Liz Warren, and she is the Director of Public Charging at Mer. And we've known each other a little bit now, Liz, haven't we?
We have.
She's a wonderful person. You're going to really enjoy listening to this, honestly. It's only your second podcast, so you're not quite a podcast virgin. But we've been chatting for ages before this, and I've had comments, I was just saying to you, wasn't I, that you can usually tell on the podcast when I've been talking to somebody beforehand for a while, and this is it, because she's brilliant. So Liz, thank you ever so much for joining me.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me on. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
So I want to talk to you about, because you have just been made, so you were interim director of public charging at Mer, weren't you? And you've just been made a full director, which is fantastic.
Thank you very much.
You've been at Mer for some time, haven't you? And Statkraft as well, which is kind of the company that owns Mer. I always talk to people about how they got to what they're doing now, because you were kind of you were an analyst to start off with, weren't you?
Absolutely. So my history originally was in trading analytics, and I worked for a couple of trading companies quite some time ago on the trade floor. I've been always in energy. So I started off in electricity, moved to gas, had a brief stint in fuel oil, which is, a bit different compared to my new renewable space. And that's taken me on a bit of a journey on the analysis side and brought me into Statkraft, which I don't know if you know much about Statkraft at all, but it's Europe's largest renewable energy generator. Lots of focus on hydro projects. They own all the hydro projects in Norway and build, lots of wind, solar farms, and they're a route to market for the energy that's produced. And I've been in Statkraft for quite some time now, so I think it's just over 12 years.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I know.
I didn't realise it was that long. It is a while, then, isn't it? Goodness
it is
me.
Quite a while, exactly. Maybe a bit longer than that. I'm in complete denial about what year it is, if I'm honest. I'm still very much in 2014. I think I'm around there. Yeah. But it's not. It's 10 years later. I started off in the PPA business in Statkraft, working for a guy called Duncan Dale as they expanded their part of the business. Really exciting time, massive part of the PPA world. And as a result of that, I had my sort of eyes open to other industries, renewable industries in the UK, and moved into biomass, where we were bringing initially wood pellets up into the UK, and then wood chip we were exporting from, or still are exporting from Norway into Denmark as a sort of a heat and power solution. And because I was in that kind of new business part of Statkraft, I was sort of recommended for a role within EV by my then brilliant manager, who was Trude Feldstad. So I moved into the EV team. And this was before we'd set up Mer as a total. We had Grand Contact in Norway. It just doesn't trip off the tongue, does it?
Does it?
We'd had Grand Contact in Norway, a fantastic charging company. And then we'd purchased a company called Ewald in Germany, EE Mobility in Germany, and decided to set up in the UK as well and grow organically. And I was the second person in. So yes, I was. Yeah. So it's quite exciting to join a brand new industry. I knew nothing about the EV industry. Obviously, my entire history is in the power industry and specifically in analytics. So yeah, it's been an exciting
journey then.
A massive journey. And then coming into a new startup business where you're organically growing. Initially, we brought in the Vattenfall in charge team, and they came in with some of the legacy network that they'd built together. Then we became Grand Contact in, I'm going to say, is it early 2020? We initially became Grand Contact, rebranded to Mer, and came together as a group with all our European counterparts. And we've really grown since then. We've Statcraft purchased the Elmtronics company in the north, which is a fleet solution, and we've kind of merged together to create Mer UK.
The ability that you've got as a company to do all this is amazing, isn't it? Really, and I was going to say, so you kind of, so Mer as an EV charging company, so you've got that legacy network, haven't you?
Yes,
Where were you originally then, and where are you now with the kind of the sort of the rollout of charging?
Absolutely. So originally, we had quite a lot of AC installs. We were on with various partnerships. We've been installing in council car parks. Joju have been doing a lot of those installations. And then over time, we've grown that network and focused more on installing the higher powered DC chargers. And this is realistically from the learnings of our sister companies in Norway and in Germany, who've said, well, yeah, it's great to have that AC network, but actually where it really is and where it's really needed, a DC, ultra rapid DC hubs, right? And one of the important things about this industry, which I think a lot of CPOs would probably agree with me, you need to almost find your lane and stay in your lane. So being an AC provider and a DC provider can be difficult. You're trying to solve two quite different things, right? And there are some fantastic AC charging companies out there, and there are some now great DC charging companies, of which Mer is really focused on being one. Our fleet side of the business offers a different solution. So we're looking at depot, workplace, and that sort of thing. But we see that kind of come together eventually, because those guys that are charging at their depot, workplace, they want to charge on the public network too. And so it has that kind of joint together strategy. And whilst we operate quite separately, we're very, very close at the same time. So ultimately, we're kind of learning from the journey of the Norwegians, who, as we know, are extraordinarily successful when it comes to EV charging, right? They've done it. We are a little bit different in the UK, as you know.
Yes.
But we have some other challenges, but a lot of them they've kind of seen before, and they know how it works, and they know ultimately, what a customer wants and needs from their charging locations.
So what we're looking at there really is them developing best practice and passing it on to you guys, isn't it? Because like I say, you don't, when you start, you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. So, and I think also in the UK, we can take that learning from Norway, but we've also got what we know from operating the network that we've got at the moment, and the chargers that, the original DC chargers that we put in, some years ago. We're going back to them now and revisiting them and thinking, well, that was probably not quite the right solution. As I mentioned earlier, we've got a site over in Redhill where we went back quite quickly and put in cable management, because those cables are heavy, right?
Very heavy.
It's still an older site for us, so there's a little bit of a curb as well. So we try to do what we can to make that site better. So we put in some fantastic cable management under our then head of ops. Brilliant idea, quite frankly. And I can confirm that they hold up to a lot of weight, because we did test them by hanging off them ourselves. So we know that they can take. Yeah, we did. I've taken my children there. You can swing off them. It takes quite some going to. This isn't a challenge, I hope.
No, please don't. If you're watching and listening, please don't go and try and hang off any of these cable management systems.
That is not what that's for. But we want to know that they're strong, that they work, right? And they can take some of the weight off, because, it's important for the customer. We're not all the kind of the really strong guys and
Any woman.
ladies who are doing our installation.
Any
We
woman.
are quite strong. I'm doing quite a lot of weights, but not everybody can lift that. You've got, situations, if you've got something going on with your wrists, or it just, they're heavy things, so you want to be able to do as much for the customer to make them as easy to use as possible.
Because I said to you, didn't I, before we started recording, that I actually hit myself in the face with a cable, which was fantastic. I thought I was going to go to see a customer with a fat lip, because literally I had parked slightly not quite aligned, and there wasn't a cable management system.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say who it was, the charge point operator, but it wasn't you. But literally, and it was about -2, and yeah, it hit me in the gob, which which was not. It's hard. It's
Heavy.
painful.
It's very painful. And, as a charge point operator, we don't want that. We don't want our customers, at risk of any form of injury. That's not what we're here for. We're really focused on our HSE. It's one of the key parts of our organisation. And, we've got our ISOs. We keep up to date with all our policies. But you've got to put them into practice, right? You've got to follow all of that through. So hitting yourself in the face with one of those cables, I'm really glad you didn't get a fat lip, quite frankly, because it could be really awful for you. So, we do what we can to make sure that these things don't happen, right?
But you are now, like you said, you are looking back at what the legacy systems were, the legacy charge points were that you put in, and you're looking at these now with a bit of a different lens, aren't you? Which obviously means that if you're looking at them with more, because you're aiming to be more customer focused, but that also means that you've got to pay for these additional retrofits, haven't you? And it's not a cheap thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that the initial sort of work that we did was to look at maybe some of our AC sites that were seeing quite a lot of demand and upgrading them to DC chargers. Brilliant for us, brilliant for the customer, much faster charging rate. And for us, we get that increased utilisation, which is what it's all about. Absolutely. Where it's commercially viable to do so, we go back, we change things, we put in cable management, we'll make things more accessible and easier to use, and so on. Unfortunately, there are times where it isn't commercially viable. And this is the difficult part of being a CPO right now, is that we're building a network for the future.
Yeah.
But the future isn't here yet in terms of utilisation. So then we've got this kind of crossover of, we really want to do these things, but without the utilisation, it makes it quite difficult to do, realistically. Yeah. And that's why driving the demand for electric vehicles, getting people into these cars, the second-hand EV market is so important to us as a CPO.
It really is, and I am a purchaser of a second-hand EV. Do you know what I mean? And actually, that was an interesting journey itself. And I've said to other people, and I think we've talked about, it's about that. Understanding, increasing the understanding of what EVs are all about. That I've just written something this morning somebody put a comment on one of my posts on LinkedIn, and literally talking about the fact that we need everybody to be communicating, including CPOs. So it's got to come from the manufacturers, from the car leasing companies, the dealerships, the CPOs, anybody who's involved in this space. We've got to be talking to people and explaining about what EVs are all about. That yes, they do drive a little bit differently, but they're blooming brilliant. Yeah. And yes, they do charge a little bit differently, but actually, and this is kind of like I basically said warts and all on this post. We've got to tell people warts and all that things like this aren't perfect to start off with.
Yep.
But actually over time, like I said, the whole, you don't know what you don't know. Actually, you start learning this stuff, don't you? And yes, you need to drive the utilisation to be able to afford to retrofit. So it's always this chicken and egg thing, isn't it, really?
It is, and I think this is what makes it so interesting to be part of, right? Because we're still in a very new industry. I know for those of us in the industry, and there are people who've been working in it for years and years, you feel like it's here, it's further, but it's really not, is it? And we were talking earlier, how many BEVs on the road? approximately
1.3, I think, at the moment.
1.3 million-ish.
Yeah.
How many petrol diesel vehicles on the road? Closer to 30 million, right? So this is a massive, massive difference. And I think as an EV driver, and you're an EV driver too, you consider how the charging market is now when there are only the 1.3 million on the road. It's pretty good, right? It's all right at the moment. 15 times more than that. Right, then it's a different world. And that's what Mer are here for. We're trying to build in the right location, at the right size, in a sensible, sustainable way, so that it's there, ready for the future. And it's that sensible, sustainable way which I think is very difficult to get right, personally.
It takes time to get that. I mean, we were talking about this before we started recording. So for those of you who don't know what I do outside the podcast, I work in business improvement, and we're working with charge point operators, and the idea is that, so basically we took 220 EV drivers' feedback, asked them specific questions and some open text, and gave them an opportunity to feedback about what their thoughts were about their charging journey. And it was really, really interesting. I mean, God, it took ages to write. I've never written a white paper in my life, and that's what we came out with from at the other side from the survey. And like you say, people don't realise what you guys have to put up with. And I did try and kind of, I didn't want it just be all about moaning and groaning. This was why I kind of integrated recommendations, because I wouldn't be me if I wasn't, from a business improvement point of view, and then a bit of a roadmap. But I wanted to try and kind of say, right, okay, there were certain things, for example, with regards to speed of charges. We talked about this earlier, didn't we? There are certain times when it could be, if you don't get the speed on the charger that you're on, there are a variety of reasons behind that. Yeah, people don't understand that, do they? And it's things like that actually, I think OEMs, so the manufacturers, everybody needs to be giving that information so that people know what they're potentially going to get.
And I think you make a really good point in your white paper, and it's one of your sort of early points, is that it needs to be standardisation.
Yeah.
And for standardisation to occur, that needs some form of intervention, some sort of regulation. It's very hard as a CPO to drive standardisation across a competitive landscape. It has to come from somewhere else. We talked earlier about instructions on chargers. We've got loads of different manufacturers. They work in different ways.
Yep.
We've got CPOs, lots of different back offices, lots of different ways of operating the chargers, lots of different customer services. So whilst we have seen some great moves in regulation, so 24/7 customer service, again, you flag that's brilliant. It's much needed. There's also been some changes in regulation, like the uptime, 99% uptime and reliability. Now, look, reliability is really important. We know that. I'm an EV driver. You want to turn up. You want that charge point to be working. And if it's not working, you want to know before you get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would argue quite strongly that the regulation around that, the way that you do that, and the way that you penalise if the charge point operator hasn't done that, needs to be considered very, very carefully, because there are things out of our control that we can't do to keep the units online, and then there are things in our control. I can tell you from a CPO point of view, if it's in our control, we're trying to fix it, because our money, our income comes from the utilisation. If that charge point is not online, we don't get any money, and there's a problem, right? And that's, so I think there are things that could be done from a kind of more regulatory environment that I think you point towards the standardisation, towards making things easier for the customer in that respect, that are potentially the ones that we should be all getting behind as much as we can. The issue that I'm going to keep coming back to is, without utilisation at a point where we can afford to do it all, it's difficult, right? Because, as I say, we're building a network for the future, which isn't quite here yet. So it kind of comes around in that circle.
And I was going to say, going back to the whole, so obviously the 99% reliability stake now, can, and I've seen it and I've heard it in other places, can create bad behaviour from CPOs that aren't actually doing what you're trying to do and be more customer focused. And in order to avoid being penalised, they're turning their chargers off or bagging them off or stuff like that. And that doesn't do anything to anybody other than the EV driver at the other end plugging in and going, what's happening now? It's not on, it's not working, what's happening?
Yeah, it defeats the point, right? We
Yeah.
want those chargers online. I mean, our internal KPIs are to have chargers online. Of course they are. We want to get the energy to the customer, right? So we have Statkraft as a backer. We've got the sustainable energy. The whole point is to make sustainable transport, right? So we want to get the energy to the customer. Getting the infrastructure right, having it online is obviously like fundamentally important. Having it in the right place for the customer
Yeah.
is really important. Again, really enjoyed reading your white paper because I think your number one was it was which was it again? It was the actual user experience and the location, and that customers would potentially go somewhere where they know the charger's going to be working.
Yeah.
So they will go. And the reason it resonates with me is that I have charging locations that I will actively go slightly further off route
Me
because I
too.
know that it's working,
Yeah.
right? And there's often a nice form of coffee shop, or it's on a retail site where I want to go to the right location, the right shops, etc. So that's really important, isn't it? And even more so than price, which I
Yeah.
always find really interesting because you think the price would always drive, but
But
it
it's
doesn't
not always.
always.
Do you know what? Me and my husband were talking about this yesterday, and he was saying that price is a big factor to him, you know. But to me, I'm of the same mind as you. I would rather, if I'm on a long journey, I'd rather there be something there that I can go to. I might need the loo. I might need a
Yes.
sandwich. I'm celiac as well, so for me, getting a sandwich, there are only certain places that I can pick
Yeah.
them up, you know. So everybody has their own requirements, don't they? But you know, for him it was price, but for
Yep.
me it's that location, it's where it is and what's there.
So that's really interesting because I would say the same for myself and my husband. It's definitely we'll be going to the nice charging stop when I'm in control of the route,
Absolutely, same here.
which is pretty much any time I'm in the car. Just to be clear, if I'm in the car, I'm in control. So, but if he's in the car, yeah, he'll go sit wherever. And that's a difference in the experience, right? That's kind of like, I wish it wasn't the case, but I think that the men don't necessarily have to think about some of the things that maybe we think about a little bit more. There's some charging stops I wouldn't go to on my own at night,
Oh
right?
God, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Whereas maybe some guys might think about it, some potentially wouldn't. Who knows? It's just a different way of thinking about how you solve the problem, and that's really important, isn't it? Because we, represent half the market in the UK. We're lots of lots of different women out there, lots of different lives. We're working, we're mums or we're not mums, or we're trying to solve many things simultaneously. And we've got to
Absolutely.
design solutions that work for us as well as they work for maybe a more sort of a chap who's driving across the UK going to meetings, right? He's going to want something different to what I would want if I'm driving. I went down to Cornwall a couple of weekends ago with the kids, just me and the kids. The location I want to charge at is a bit different. I want food, toilets, something for them to do. It's
Exactly, because
yeah,
you know that you need to keep them occupied, you know, and all that kind of
yeah,
stuff. You wouldn't want to take your kids somewhere, you know, that because I said to you, didn't I, before we started recording? I turned up at a big charging hub. There was an outage. Long story. Read some of my blogs or posts, and you'll have heard this. So I ended up going to a 22 kilowatt AC charger that had the wrong destination pinned.
hmm
And I had, I said to you, didn't I? I had 24 miles range left, and it's about 27 miles from where I was to to my home. It was in like I said, it was a back street. There's no way I would have gone there at night on my own. Absolutely no way, because I had to open my boot. It wasn't tethered. I had to get the cable out. We had
Yeah.
bags. I was with a non-EV driver friend in the car. We had to get all the stuff out. Oh God, it was just ridiculous just to get the
Yeah.
blooming cable out.
Yeah.
But I just needed that top up to get me home when I got home with 9 miles range left.
And that to me is everything, right? It's all for you at that point. You were failed by us as a CVO industry because we didn't have the chargers in the right place. You were on the go. You wanted to stop, charge quickly, and get going again. Ideally, somewhere safe with some form of amenity. I mean, I think you say in your paper, it's basically toilets and coffee
Yeah,
generally,
just
minimum,
somewhere. Yeah.
something to do.
Because actually, you don't want to just
Yeah.
be sat. Sometimes you don't want to just be sat in the car because you've got a little while to wait. I usually find somewhere where I can buy a sandwich, usually gluten free, or some salad or something like that. That I can use the loo and
Yep.
have a little walk. Come back into. I don't want to sit down and eat it in the place. I'll
No,
come back and eat in the car, and then we can keep an eye on the charge, and then that's it.
off you go.
Go
Yeah,
easy.
exactly. And I've driven, I've driven honestly thousands of miles in my
Mm,
car,
mm.
and it's consistent. This is what you want to do is stop. Sometimes you have to stop for 50 minutes. If you're on a really long journey and you happen to have rocked up a charger with maybe slightly slower speed,
Yeah.
then you've got a proper stop to fulfill. You do want to be able to stretch your legs, right? As great as it is to sit in your EV, and they are great cars. I love them. I never really had new cars before my EV, so it's a bit of a shocker having that. But you don't want to sit in it the whole
No,
time. You
not all
want
the
to
time.
actually
Remind me
walk
what you've
around.
got.
I have got a Tesla, I'm afraid.
Oh,
Tesla
you've got
Y.
the like the creme de la creme, haven't you? Really?
No, it
You've
is a
got the
good car,
whole.
and it is brilliant, and it's got so much space. I don't want to be a salesperson for Tesla here, but wow, it's got some decent space, and it's got us all the way down to the south of France on 3 holidays now, and
Mm,
you can just. It is a very easy experience. I try and get onto outside of the Tesla network, just so you
good.
know.
Yeah, no, that because I
It's
always I
important,
always
right?
think, and I'm pleased don't take this as a criticism at all. I always think, why do people who work for CPOs actually have Teslas? Because you want to experience the non-Tesla
Yeah,
experience, so you can you can find
do.
out and feel what that
Yeah,
looks
absolutely.
like.
I mean, I spent a day a couple of weeks ago with our head of marketing, just going round. I'm in Surrey. We picked her up and we went round lots of different charging locations to make sure that we are, we're staying relevant, that we know what's
Mm,
going on and we understand
mm.
what it means to be a customer in this space. It's really, really important to have that understanding because if you don't, you build things that you think work in your head. But unfortunately, if you don't have the real life connection,
Yeah.
and that understanding that everybody needs something different, so you've got to appeal to a broad range of people. I've got to make these sites accessible. I need to make sure there's some form of lighting where I can. I don't. We try and avoid curbs as much as we can now. I think pretty much we don't do that. It is a thing of the
It was a
past. You will
legacy,
find
wasn't it?
them.
Yeah.
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 I mean, especially in the kind of initial installs that we did where we were in those council car parks, you just can't get round it,
Mm,
unfortunately.
mm.
But if we could go back, we'd obviously change things, right? We would think a bit more about our landscaping, which we do now. So you'll see them in our garden centres where we don't have that. We have the lovely Ken Power
They
units.
are good.
They
Yeah.
are really, really good, and they've got great cable management. We've thought
Mm.
a lot about signage. I told you that we changed some signage because I took my parents to a site and got them to test it for me. And that drives a bit of change because there's a
Yes.
whole other market right out there
Mm.
of people that I don't behave. I don't behave like my parents.
Not yet, love.
Maybe soon, but not at this point in time. But they're they're a part of the market. They're a part of the customer base, and we need to respect that. So if the signage isn't quite right or the cables are heavy, we should be doing what we can to make sure that it works for them too.
Oh, totally right. And like you say, going back to the hanging off a cable management
Please
system.
don't do that.
Yeah, please don't do that. But actually having that ability to take those really, really heavy cables and make them that bit more manageable. The fact that you're going, like I said, I'm going to go back to you don't know what you don't know. You didn't know what you didn't know. You're learning. All the CPOs are learning, But
Yeah, absolutely.
it's about putting what you've learned into practice, into place, and creating best practice around it. And like you said about standardization, and I agree. I was going to ask you. So we did talk about the regs
Hmm.
overall, because there's a number of things that are 24th of November. There's a number of things that are actually happening.
Hmm.
So we're recording this just a couple of weeks shy of that.
Yep.
What do you feel are do the regulations, obviously we're not looking at roaming until next year, but do the regulations fulfill what we need currently within the CPO sector?
So, from a very CPO perspective and a slightly, hopefully, neutral answer, I think that whilst it is great to have the focus on customer service and reliability, they are also very important things for CPOs as a baseline. And if you're not doing that properly, you're going to find it difficult to succeed, right?
Mm,
We know that
mm,
broken chargers lose you customers, and as a business you can't thrive, right? So there are my argument on that side is it's kind of what we should be doing anyway, but then putting fines against it is a challenge, right? I
yeah.
do think where the focus really is needed is on driving sales and utilization, making EVs accessible to everybody. These are not cheap cars. Even on the secondhand market, they are not cheap cars. There are plenty of people out there who do not have driveways, so they
Mm,
can't charge on the cheap rates overnight at home. So is that accessible to everybody? It's really not,
no,
right?
yeah,
Those guys
no.
are forced onto the public network, which then that's difficult. So that's where I think there should be a level of focus, solving it for everybody across the
Mm,
board. These 1.3 million cars, I consider myself in a really lucky, really fortunate, privileged position to drive the car that I'm driving.
mm,
And honestly, not if I hadn't been in the CPO industry, if I wasn't in this industry, I probably wouldn't be driving that car right now.
mm,
I probably would
mm,
have got myself a second EV that I can use to run around.
yeah.
These are expensive. So you need to do something to make sure that everybody can get in there and we can drive up the utilization. When you've driven up utilization, that's when you start to see the really interesting things happen because we've got that kind of demand behind, we can get the energy flow through, and then suddenly you're in a competitive landscape where people are trying to attract customers in, then you can do more, can't you, to make it work for the customer. And
It's
that's
about,
kind of
I
my
suppose
focus.
it, I was going to say, I suppose in the meantime, it's about that level of communication. So if there are certain things that you can't do at the moment, it's
Yeah,
about communicating with the customer. You don't want to say it's not a failure,
yeah,
but so you're not admitting that there's failures there. You are basically providing them with that information that if we can't afford to standardize things at the moment, but this is what we do, actually you can give that EV driver that information about their charge. We talked before, didn't we, before we start
yeah,
recording, about the dance of the initiation,
yeah,
because it is like a dance, isn't it? And for
yeah, it
you
is.
in a Tesla, it's a piece of cake because you know what you're getting. But for
Yes.
us who are not, and you when you're visiting non-Tesla
Yeah.
superchargers, full of face there,
But
but actually it is a dance. It's so
it
what,
is.
right? Okay, so and I said to you, I helped somebody on her first public charging session
Yeah.
recently, and a charger where there was no information on the screen. We were both in a bit of a rush. Well, no, we weren't in a rush. I was trying to make sure that I was supportive to her, really. The information wasn't on the screen, and we plugged in the wrong way round. It was supposed to be tap, plug, initiate, and we
Yeah.
did plug, tap, no initiate. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's this, come on, it's kind of like, right. And then we noticed that on the left-hand side above the chargers, kind of, sort of in between, I think there was a bank of four, and in between it, above, were the instructions. Oh, bloody hell. That's what we
Yep.
should have done. But
Yeah.
come on, make it easy for us. We don't all have to look up there to the left and above or wherever. Can you make it easy so that actually it's on the charger? Or
Yeah.
just whatever you can do. I know that that's not down to you as a CPO.
Yeah.
And I'm not, by the way, I'm not venting at you specifically. I'm just saying, for somebody like me, the way my brain works, it just means that I don't always look where everybody thinks would be obvious. And I'm sure there's lots of people like me that don't.
Well, I have to admit, I've been, like I said, we went round with my head of marketing and had a look at a lot of local charging sites, and I couldn't help but help some of the people who were on the sites too, even though they were at competitive locations. So I need that noted. I was even helpful, even at the competitor locations. Of course I am. I love the EV journey, right? The instructions were there. We don't like reading instructions. A lot of people don't like reading instructions.
No.
I mean, you put them on the screen. Sometimes the order changes, the dance changes. It doesn't always stay the same. And that's a bit of a situation. And I think one of the points that you made about standardisation, we need to talk to the manufacturers and say, well, we need to make this easier. Contactless makes it easier. Roaming partnerships make it easier, right? Those sorts of things that we're very pro in Mer, and I know other CPOs are too. It just means that you can rock up to the charge point and get going, right? Because that's what you want. And I actually see that, yes, I know I've got a Tesla and I know it's very, very easy, but actually I see that as a massive bonus, because that is a bit of a dream scenario, isn't it?
Yeah.
That I just rock up, I plug in and I go away, and then the app shouts at me and I unplug it.
Yeah.
That's how easy it is, right?
Exactly.
Well, that's kind of direction of travel, isn't it? That's what we've got to be getting to, the whole plug and charge, everything else that happens.
Absolutely.
Right? So, and it is about making it easier, because if you don't make it easier, you're not going to get the utilization. You don't have the income. You want to be sustainable in all aspects, and that's not just the kind of renewable energy and the way of working. It's also making sure that you've got a viable business in the long term.
And being customer focused in the meantime,
The only way
in
to
whatever
get
way that is I think is the right way to go. Obviously, listening and kind of making sure that the EV driver is in your sights. Let's talk about feedback from those EV drivers, and so because obviously that was another thing that came up on the white paper and the survey that we wrote. EV drivers were basically saying that they didn't feel listened to. What methods can CPOs like yourselves integrate into what you've already got to make sure that because yes, there's always going to be an EV driver who's going to have a bit of a moan about anything. But actually, for those things that people kind of go, God, this is really, really winding me up, and it keeps happening at this place, and la 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 la. What do you do about that level of feedback coming to you?
So the customer feedback is really important to us, and I think if it isn't working, we want to know quickly. I'd be surprised. I mean, we've got quite a strong focus within Mer. So we have an external frontline support, which is pretty normal, just to make sure, chargers are restarted if they need to, and so on and so forth. But anything that needs to be escalated comes internal to Mer. Then we've kind of combined our customer service across all of our BUs, so that we've got the shared learning, the shared experience. We've obviously got business units in our function that are further down the EV journey than us, so they really do know, and they have been here, so they can help advise and make sure that we're going in the right direction. We have a lot, not a lot, but we have dialogue with customers. So we have a team who are very focused on making sure that they take a concern through to the end. We've got quite a lot of things that can happen and that do occur for some people, whether it's the car or the charger or the location. Yeah. It's actually really important for us to know when these things are going on. There are times when, if the charger isn't giving the right output, we kind of need to know that. And it's quite hard for us as a CPO to always know all the time what's going on across every single unit. So if we've got, a bank of units and most of them are working perfectly, but one just keeps consistently delivering under power, hearing from the customer is a joy, right? And I think there are whole apps out there that are benefited, that are using this as a kind of a business where you as a customer log onto the app and then you go to charge sites and you report on how that charge site is performing, or if it isn't performing, and that goes off to the CPO. That's brilliant, because you kind of need that real world experience to really know what the problem is and whether we can get it fixed.
But how where is it? And I don't know whether you know this. So at what point, if I came to a Mer charger in a DC hub, is there a point during that journey that other than having to ring the support number, because you're using Kempower DC units, which are very good, they're very reliable. But if there was ever an issue like that, is there somewhere at that point where you can give that feedback and kind of go, I've got it working, but it's not running at, so we get, God, for our Ionic, we only get a maximum, I think it's 46 kilowatts. But sometimes I've pulled on different chargers about 36. And it's kind of like, right, okay, it's all right, but it's not great. Is there a place we can feed that back?
So, yeah, absolutely. There's the phone line. Obviously, we've got email inboxes where you can drop comments, thought through on email to us, and those go straight into our internal customer service team. We're looking into other solutions for that at the moment. So we've gone through, as everybody is, we're going through development cycles where we're trying to, make sure that we're improving. And we are looking at solutions that would mean you as a customer could give that feedback to us more easily, right? Because that's really valuable information. It's really valuable information. So this is a solution for the future. Absolutely. Right now, it's all about email and phone calls.
It'd be nice, for example, if you could have it on the Kempower unit when you're stopping the charge. For something to, depending on where you've set it, where you've initiated it from, to actually just ask you that kind of, it's like a CSAT question, isn't it? It's a customer satisfaction question. Was everything okay?
And we send out a survey, and we do for those customers that have registered with us. We send out an annual customer survey. I think we've looked at doing that a little bit more regularly. I hope I've not misquoted. I have to check from my head of marketing. She might come back. But yeah, they send out an annual survey, and we look at the details in that very, very closely. We're just going through that cycle right now. This is so important to us. We want to know what the customer's saying. We want to know where the pain points are so we can solve them. Again, it all comes back down to, you need to solve customer journey. You need strong customer satisfaction if you want the high utilization. Because number one, people will go to charge sites that are reliable, they know are working, and in decent locations, even before price, which, is interesting. I suspect they're very closely interlinked. That's my view, is you can't have one way out of whack with the other.
No, you're right. I think it has all got to pull together in the right direction. So we've kind of talked about making the EV driver's journey more seamless, but long term, where do you see Mer being part? Where would you like Mer to be as part of the infrastructure? Because you are kind of leading. You're one of the CPOs, I would say, that are leading the way with that, the way that you're thinking about the customer experience. But where do you want to be long term?
So the goal of us is to produce a network that is reliable and in the right location. And we're all about, on the public side of the business, we are all about that on the go, that retail location. We're building into that sector. We want hubs. We don't want single sites and so on. We're looking at the hubs. We're trying to make sure that we're doing the right thing at the right place at the right time. We're a responsible CPO, right? We don't want to go too little, too far. We just need to get it that just right. Yeah, and that's hard. That's really, really tough. It would be great to, you look at all the brilliant CPOs that are out there that are doing fantastically. we've got our zone, right? It's the reliability, the sustainability, the way the company operates. Like I say, yeah, it's just building the right thing at the right time. That's what I want to be known for.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
spoke to a customer a few weeks ago who, they were at our charge site in Cirencester at Gateway Cafe. Beautiful, beautiful cafe. Highly recommend it. I was having a chat with a customer and they said, "Oh, we're so pleased to see, a Mer charger here because, you deliver. Then we've got lots of sites down on the south coast that they wanted to go to." That is what amazing feedback. Oh, we saw it was Mer, so we came to it because we know that you're going to be working for us, and that's what I want. I just
Yeah.
Yeah, if we can just get it right, that's perfect. And I think that's what we're doing, right? That's why we're building at the locations that we're building now, and you'll see us building over the next 12, 18 months.
I like it. I really do. I'm going to ask you one final question.
Yep.
If you could change one thing about the UK's approach to EV charging, what would it be?
Ooh.
Didn't tell you I was going to ask you this one, did I?
From a customer perspective or from a
Just generally.
regulation?
Yeah, wherever you want to take
One
it from.
thing. Wow. Okay. I would work very hard on communication, and I and I would really address the misconceptions that there are around this market. It really isn't that difficult to drive an EV around the UK, regardless of Tesla, not Tesla. There are fantastic charging locations.
Yeah.
There are CPOs who are reliable, who are delivering what they've promised. It is not 5 years ago anymore.
No.
And 5 years ago was tough, right?
Mm,
There were plenty of broken units in the wrong place. In that time, we've seen a dramatic change in the hardware, the reliability, the types of sites. We weren't building hubs in those days, right? It was just single site locations. Now you rock up 6, 10, 12, 14 bays available for you to charge at. I would address that because the 1.3 million BEV drivers at the moment are the first wave of people to come in the market. The next few waves are people who, they don't have time to plan and think,
no.
and they don't want to, right? And so when they hear, oh, the chargers don't work, oh, the car ranges are rubbish, oh, I can't be bothered,
It's a
etc.
faff, as one of my friends called it.
It's a faff. That is it exactly. It's a faff. And it's not a faff. And I know you had a bad experience, but I tell you what, if that first location had just been online, it was unlucky. They probably had something
I
that they
know.
needed to do on the grid.
Totally.
Totally unlucky, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But those things are going to get less and less, and they are less and less, right? And even now, when I did that day, when I drove around Surrey looking at all of those charging locations, we had really good experiences, right? Across the board, we had good experiences. The chargers were working. You could generally work out how to complete the dance of starting it. It needs to be worked on. But yeah, I would do a lot around the communication. I would change the way that we think and feel about driving an EV.
There's so much that we can tell people about, and I think as the number of EV drivers increases, we'll get to a tipping point where there'll be one point where you will know an EV driver. You'll know somebody who drives an EV, whether you agree about it or not, but actually it's about having an opportunity to chat to that person. But it shouldn't actually be down to that driver. It should be we should all be singing. That was singing from the same hymn sheet was hinging from the same hymn sheet. You know what I mean? So we should all be singing the same song.
It's a good environment out there, right? And
yeah.
I think my personal thoughts on it is, and the reason I was attracted into this industry in the first place is because of the localized pollution, right? And I know where I live, our high street that I walk my children to school through is actually,
awful.
For leafy Surrey, a really polluted street because of the buildings along the side.
Yeah.
And you think, if those were all EVs going through there,
You
we
went
would
off.
not be breathing this in, right? So this is a big thing. It needs to be done. Let push the pollution back to the source, and
Yeah.
let the companies like Statkraft deal with the problem there, right? And then green up transport, so it's a much healthier environment for us all outside our houses, our kids' schools, the playground, all of it, right?
Absolutely. Oh my God. I totally get you. And I talked about this ages ago because my son's now gone to uni. But when he was at school, he hated the fact there was one time where there was a mum behind me and her car was running. And I was inside the car just like, you're just polluting and kids are walking past your car and
Yeah.
breathing in that noxious PM 2.5.
Yeah. And they're at head. That's what it always
That
gets me.
height, isn't it?
Yeah, it's their height, especially when you happen to be in a more affluent area and those are big cars. That the exhausts are at your toddler's height and
Yeah.
your little primary school child's height. That's a
That's
horrible,
awful, isn't it?
and it's a motive for me, and that's
Yeah.
why when I first got the opportunity to come in, that's what attracted me in the first place. And it was around the time of that really sad story about the girl in.
Ella.
Thank you. My brain has gone. And it really, that's just horrible, right? She's just living a life.
Yeah. 9 years
So
old. It was
yeah,
awful.
exactly.
Round Lewisham. And Lewisham is a really, really kind of busy commuter kind of place. I've driven from Reading to Lewisham myself last year. I was doing it regularly and it was taking me 3 hours to
Yeah,
get there just because of the congestion. But you've got, like you say, you've got kids, families, old people, you name it. They're all walking on those roads past all of
yeah,
that congestion and pollution.
yep. And you think of it, it's not just me, right? It's the cyclists and the runners and everyone
Yeah.
else. You're taking this all in. You're trying to be fit and healthy, and
Oh,
then you
you're
cycle
breathing this
down a
stuff
main
in.
road and you're like breathing all this crap in. So this. I think it's really important that if we can change the communication, we can change the feeling around EV, then we can get that mass market really buying into this. And then it's the CPO's job to make sure that as they're coming in, it's as easy as possible for them to get from A to B, right? Well, if we don't, then we can't succeed. So
I'm going to end on that because
yeah,
I think that is really, really pertinent. So I'm going to say thank you, Liz, because
pleasure.
I could talk to you, and we did talk for ages beforehand anyway, didn't we? But I could talk to you for so long. I hope all of you watching and listening have actually got so much out of this because the way that Liz has put this across is just brilliant and highlighting what CPO customer journeys or the way that they can think about customer journey can actually be. So I just want to say thank you. Seriously, it's been absolutely a joy talking to you. Do you know what? I'm just going to finish off by saying to everybody watching and listening, because I do say this now, the only way to get people, to listen to this podcast or watch it is by sharing it. We want to get people to hear about, it is warts and all, but actually, if you can share it, if if you've been listening to this, if you can put comments on or actually just, kind of a review or something like that, or if you're subscribing, etc., but just share it, because once you share it, more people get to hear it and they get to find out the truth about all of this stuff and not just the stuff that the media has in, the negative bits. But so on that note, and I'm going to get off my orange box now, or soapbox, whatever you want to call it. Liz, I really, really appreciate your time. It's been amazing.
Thank
Thank
you.
you ever so much, my darling.
Thank you.
And to everybody else listening and watching, I will say see you later. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching Electric Evolution. I really love bringing you these weekly conversations about sustainability, renewables, and building a cleaner future together. If you're passionate about positive change, please like, subscribe, and share with others who also care about these topics. You can also download our white paper, Plugging into the Future, at fullcircleci.co.uk and join the discussion on improving sustainable transport, or email me at liz@fullcircleci.co.uk. Thanks for watching. Bye.